The story is about a dungeon that suddenly appeared in the yard of a 40-year-old guy named Kazuhiko Izzo's house, where he ran a consulting business. As it turns out, this dungeon leads to the downfall of the world, so Kazuhiko decided to start a new enterprise called Dungeon Busters. In the Tokyo metropolitan city, Edogawa Ward, Kazuhiko can be seen slurping his delicious ramen. After he finishes his meal, he thanks the owner for his service and leaves for work. He has a meeting with Mr. Sasaki Shoji at 1 p.m., and then a meeting with Naxar Kurokawa Kogyo at 3 p.m. in Shinagawa. As Kazuhiko checks his schedule for the day, he gets a call from someone. Kazuhiko decides to pick up the call and thanks the person for the other day. He schedules his next meeting and gets going. 10 years ago, Kazuhiko quit his job after becoming a certified business consultant and labor attorney. Ever since, he has been working in Edogawa, Koto, and Chiba as a consultant for insurance companies, training lecturer, and so on. While walking, Kazuhiko is notified about some company canceling the meeting and thinks he will have to get in touch with another company now. Kazuhiko doesn't intend to get married and lies in a 30-year-old house in the Shikabane district of Edogawa, which is an isolated island on land. Both his parents are no longer in this world with him, and he has no siblings. There are relatives a few miles away who occasionally come to visit him. He lives a carefree life where he gets to work, 1 day off, 2 days work, and then 2 days off. Kazuhiko walks past a shop where he encounters Mochi. He gets a call from Mr. Yuzi with plenty of service on hand. He looks at his watch, realizing he has plenty of time on his hand right now. With that, he decides to have one drink. After a tiring day full of work, Kazuhiko finally comes back home. He opens the door, gets inside, and shuts the door behind him. He takes off his shoes and decides to wash his face. After that, he cooks a delicious meal to end the day. As he is about to dig in, Kazuhiko hears a loud noise with everything shaking. Once everything is calm, he wonders if it was an earthquake. Kazuhiko decides to check the news, which is all about tomorrow's weather. He couldn't find any news about the shaking, so he decided to call it a day, assuming he had plenty of drinks today. The next day, Kazuhiko decides to do some laundry when he sees a big hole in the yard. He wonders how come he never saw this hole before. Kazuhiko decides to look around, wondering if the hole was caused by some meteorite. However, upon further analysis, he realizes that the hole is a basement leading somewhere. Kazuhiko wonders there was no information about a basement when he bought this house. He decides to take a look since he has 2 days off. With that said, Kazuhiko descends down the old stone stairs, wondering what was the basement used for. The air is flowing through the basement. Kazuhiko wonders if the basement cracked open due to yesterday's earthquake. He would like to steer clear of any trouble in the neighborhood over this. He realizes that directionally the length of the stairway extends to the neighbor's eaves. He decides to find out how far the basement goes. As he descends down the stairs, he finds a huge door. Upon opening, Kazuhiko thinks that this is quite a large basement. He could probably use it for stuff if he could get it in shape, but first he will have to inform the authorities about it. He looks around to find more doors and thinks that by the looks of it, it is either shelter from the time of opposition or a military facility. He observes one of the gate but finds no keyhole, making him wonder if this door will even open. Kazuhiko uses his flash to look at the door. When the door confirms him as the first contactor, activate the dungeon system in accordance with the world law, and 1 orbital revolution remains until all the dungeons are activated. Shocked, Kazuhiko wonders where did this voice come from. Just then, the gate talks about character card Alan, the female ninja. It says that increased cards capacity, skill slots, and skill selection will be offered as rewards. The unique ability card Gacha has been set up. Again, shocked and confused, Kazuhiko asks if the gate was mentioning some female ninja card. But before he could understand anything, the dungeon roulette finishes along with the coordinate fixation. It announces the name of the dungeon, Abyss, difficulty level A, drop reward A, and acquisition factor level A. The dungeon is looking forward for Kazuhiko's progress towards a new era. And with that, a female ninja comes out of nowhere wishing Kazuhiko best of luck. She asks if Kazuhiko is her host. She calls him Master, shocking Kazuhiko. Kazuhiko tries to calm down while wondering what has happened. What's going on? Is he being accosted by a glamorous ninja lady? The ninja girl says that she can feel his dirty gaze on her. She says she is his servant. She completely belongs to him. Kazuhiko asks her to introduce herself. The ninja girl apologizes for not introducing herself earlier. She says her name is Akane and welcomes him in the difficulty dungeon, the Abyss. She suggests salvaging the world together. Akane says she is the manifestation of one of the 180 pillars built into the dungeon's system. She has been tasked with welcoming the first person to enter the dungeon and crown them as its master. This body of hers, every inch of it will become the master's possession. Consequently, she has been trained in and have mastered all the arts of entertaining her master, and she can do whatever Kazuhiko asks her to do. She looks at him and realizing that he appears a bit angry. Akane says she can help Kazuhiko to calm down. Kazuhiko apologizes to Akane, stating he is still very confused. He says he is aware that it looks very bad for their first meeting, and he is very sorry for that. He asks her to give him a minute. Kazuhiko steps forward towards Akane while trying to lay it all out for just a second. He has stumbled upon an underground space that came out of nowhere. He heard an unknown voice spout unintelligible gibberish, found some shiny cards, and now this mysterious beauty, Akane, appeared. It doesn't seem like he is dreaming, as he is aware of the surrounding very well. At this point, it didn't even occur to him as to why it all happened, because there is no point in thinking about it. For unpredictable situations like these, he must first gather as much information as possible. With that, Kazuhiko asks Akane that earlier, a mysterious voice said something about a dungeon system. He asked Akane if she knows what it means. Akane smiles, stating the dungeon system refers to one of the ruling bodies of the universe, the absolute law. Just as water flows from a higher plane into the bellow below, the dungeon system is the one that governs all, so please treat it as such. She adds that in the upcoming years, 666 dungeons will be created in this world. Each appearance will be random, appearing in 66 to 67 places at a time, which is repeated tenfold. Kazuhiko says he does remember the voice saying one more revolution is left. He then proceeds to ask the next question. He says that when he thinks of it, he always imagined a dungeon being a massive cave-like burrow, where countless ferocious monsters and beasts reside. He asks Akane what she thinks of his idea of a dungeon. Akane says he is correct. To be more accurate, it is like a different kind of domain compared to Kazuhiko's. Akane explains that the dungeons have a ranking system from F to S, and their distribution goes like for S, there are only 7 in total, as cover about 10%. Dungeons from B to D make up more than 70% of the dungeon population. The dungeon ranking determines a number of factors like their overall difficulty, the kind of monsters it has, and the quality of the reward to be gained. Kazuhiko asks about the rewards, to which Akane says they include things like water, food, and money. Its reward comprise of things this world needs to most, and in the advanced civilization they live in today, money often is the reward for their troubles. Kazuhiko asks if he can just fill in his pockets here. Akane agrees, saying for that reason, he must train to get stronger in order to have an equal footing against the monsters. She adds that the tools foreign to the dungeon are not allowed inside, so it would be impossible for any outside armed force to attempt to destroy the dungeon. Kazuhiko asks how is he supposed to compete with the monsters then. Akane tells Kazuhiko that he has been graced with the dungeon system, so he is eligible to obtain its perks. She opens the status sheet and tells Kazuhiko that he can view all his initial status. One of his benefits is that his card holding limit in the dungeon is infinite. Usually, only 2 or 3 skill slots are available. However, Master is capable of using 6 slots, which is incredible. Kazuhiko asks if the outside tools are not allowed inside the dungeon. They then must rely on the combat skills. He asks if that is how this will work. Akane replies to Kazuhiko, saying once he is inside the dungeon, he can also obtain cards for magical beats and more. She asks if he would like to perform a dive, but Kazuhiko says not yet, as he needs to prepare for some essential things before diving first. He asks Akane to save this for later until they get back to his place first. Akane says she only exists within the confines of the dungeon. If she were to go outside, she would return to her card form. Kazuhiko asks Akane to return back to her card form then, as he still has some business to do. Akane agrees and asks him to call her by her name. Kazuhiko also asks Akane to call him by his name and not Master, Lord, etc. He asks her to refer to his status board as well. Upon checking the status board, Kazuhiko is in shock, as he has a F rank, the lowest rank that ever existed. Akane goes back to her card form. Kazuhiko picks up the card, thinking, so this card will pop out Akane. That is the only plausible explanation he could think of. He wonders what is he supposed to do now. He goes back to his place and rests a little. He goes around with his normal routine. After completing all the chores, he thinks about the hole that appeared in the garden and the girl that appeared from a card. He thinks that it all feels like a dream, making him wonder what is real anymore. Kazuhiko checks his phone and finds that he has no meetings tomorrow, so he can rest. Then there are 2 new cases the day after that. He looks at the watch, wondering how should he spend the day today. Just then, he is shocked to see that the time on his watch and the phone are different. Kazuhiko realizes that he was wearing the watch when he entered the dungeon, while he left his phone in the living room. He talked to Akane for about 20 minutes or so, but according to his phone, it says only about a few minutes have passed. He wonders if the watch is broke, but he comes to the conclusion somehow that the time has flown differently. He takes out his 2 watches and the phone, thinking the time on his phone and the watch he is wearing is different. Based on that, he is going to start testing his hypothesis. He thinks that the time must flow differently between here and inside the dungeon. His phone displays the time now as 10 in the morning, but the watch he wore shows that nearly 30 minutes have already passed. With that, Kazuhiko attaches a thread on the other watch and hands it in the dungeon. Like that, he can find out whether or not there is a difference in time. He decides to begin his test and drop the watch with a string in the dungeon for about a minute. Then he will compare the time of the watch he is wearing. He wonders how could just 1 minute really differ from one another. If it does differ, what could be the possible applications of it? When Kazuhiko lowers the watch in the dungeon, he is shook to his core. The second hand is suddenly moving like crazy. He decides to put the watch a little deeper into the dungeon. After a minute, he takes out the watch to see the results. It turns out only a minute has passed on the watch that was outside the dungeon. However, the one he lowered into the dungeon entrance has passed 2 hours. He thinks that the clock hand earlier spun around so fast. Time in the dungeon flows much faster compared to the outside world, assuming that's the direction the clock is going. He decides to ask Akane about it later. So after some time, Kazuhiko goes back in the dungeon and asks Akane about the time difference. Akane responds by saying here on the first level is what is called a safe zone. Time passes at 144 times the rate than it does on Earth. To put it simply, a person can spend 6 days inside the dungeon, but return to the surface and find only an hour has passed. Kazuhiko realizes that this place is really detached from the old world. Akane adds that the dungeon and the surface don't share the same passage of time. It is an entirely different space and is also a single individual life form in itself. The whole concept is something immeasurable by human knowledge. Kazuhiko says at first he thought the dungeon was some sort of a shelter, but it turns out this place is situated in an entirely different space. Akane agrees and says she hopes her answers are significant and that he will spend his time as he pleases. She adds that this is a safe zone as monsters are not able to infiltrate it. Kazuhiko didn't know about the concept of a safe zone or that the monsters could not come here. Akane says unless Kazuhiko chooses to go further inside, there won't be any monsters here. Therefore, there won't be any problems at all if he spends all his days exploring the depths of depravity, or that is just one way to spend his time. Kazuhiko says that this dungeon which popped out of nowhere in his garden. As of now, no one really knows about it except him. He asks Akane what she meant by save the world earlier. Akane explains that if humanity is unable to defeat 666 dungeons in the span of 10 years, if a dungeon can't be conquered, monsters will proceed to cascade out. A great monster stampede will occur, and it will envelop and devour the entirety of this world. Worried, Kazuhiko asks Akane if this all had been averted if he hadn't stumbled across this. Akane says certainly it would look that way, as he was deemed the first contact by the dungeon system, but there's nothing to be done but to lament over what has already happened. She says it wouldn't be a problem if he defeats all the dungeons by the 11th year. With that, she asks what will be Kazuhiko's next move. The fate of the world rests on Kazuhiko's actions and misstep, and it could be destroyed. Kazuhiko stands there in front of Akane asking himself what will be his play. Akane says that the monster stampede simply means that all the monsters from the uncleared dungeons will rush out all at once in a never-ending tide. She asks once more how will Kazuhiko deal with this since everything is in his hands now. Trembling with shock, Kazuhiko asks for assurance from Akane if monsters will spill out and destroy his world if the dungeons won't be conquered within the next 11 years. Akane agrees saying she doesn't really know how, because her memories have been erased, but she does know that countless civilizations have been wiped out this way. Kazuhiko thinks that he needs to calm down and think about what to do next since running away is not an option. He wonders how should he solve this problem. Should he call the police or the government? Would they believe him? Even if they believe him, many people would have realized that the world might end relatively soon. If he tried to live while ignoring the fact that he was the person who triggered the whole phenomenon, he'd think all the stress and guilt would crush him. If that is the case, he will have to take the initiative. He tells Akane that he needs to verify that he was in fact the first contact. He also needs to find the other dungeons. He doesn't know how he will be able to find them all, but first, he needs to remodel the dungeon. They will call it Dungeon DIY. With that, Kazuhiko gets out of the dungeon and begins his dungeon DIY. He puts some nails around it, then goes out to buy some stuff if people notice him being busy today. Kazuhiko apologizes to his neighbors for the noise. He lies that recently he had a bad experience with a raccoon. Yamada is amazed by Kazuhiko's skills and says she might ask him to fix his wardrobe next time. He looks at Yamada with a smile while trembling from fear inside. If he doesn't conquer the 666 dungeons, Monster Stampede will begin. Now that the dungeon system has started, humanity is one step closer to complete annihilation. He goes back to the yard since the first dungeon opened up in his backyard, and the entrance to the dungeon is on his property. That means it's still his until he surrenders it to the police. If he turns this place into a workspace, the workflow will be more efficient while clearing the dungeon. Anyway, now all that is left is to get ready. He spent the last 2 days creating a DID dungeon. With that, he goes inside and summons Akane. He never thought that his first command would be a foot massage. Akane agrees without any hesitation to give a foot massage since he saved her. Kazuhiko has managed to cover the entrance with a plastic trap, but he hasn't finished the desk over there. As Akane massages Kazuhiko's foot, she says she never thought that he would turn the safe space into an office. None of his previous masters did something like this. Kazuhiko says he thought a bed would be good to rest on before going into the dungeon. Once Akane is done with the foot massage, she asks Kazuhiko to ask her for more stuff. She says she can make him feel fulfilled and happy with her hands and stuff. But Kazuhiko simply declines the offer, stating he will ask for it later. Kazuhiko was a bit embarrassed. He asked for a foot massage to test her ability and was pleasantly surprised. A beautiful female ninja tasked as the dungeon guide who has the skill of satisfying anyone. It might be even better if he was interested in all that. Kazuhiko says he feels more relaxed now. Akane asks what should they plan on doing next as she wants to be prepared. Kazuhiko says since the dungeon appeared on his property, only he is allowed to enter, and that includes this room. He says she can make it look however she likes. Akane agrees and they decide to change the room a bit. Kazuhiko says it might look even better if she put up some nice wallpapers. He would also feel comfortable with some laminated floors and a sofa. Akane asks Kazuhiko if he would even bring a sofa here. He agrees, saying it would be nice if she could also relax a bit. Akane is impressed by Kazuhiko's concerns for her. She comes closer to him and says she can't believe he would go that far for her. She is moved to tears, but Kazuhiko isn't impressed by her beauty at all. Without flinching a little, he says he is glad she liked it, but he needs to get back to work now. And she is quite a distraction in that form. Annoyed, Akane says okay, fine, she will be off then. After getting some work done, Kazuhiko thinks that Akane looks mad before she leaves. It will be impossible for him to conquer 666 dungeons on his own. He will need a reliable group of friends that can help him. However, notifying the public about a possible mass extinction would just create chaos. The emergence of the dungeons every month is going to cause mayhem on a global scale. He guesses he needs to make his move at just the right time. He believes that this safe zone is essential, so he will make this his base for aiming at the dungeons. With that said, Kazuhiko brings all of his essentials in the safe zone. Cut-resistant vest, long-sleeve shirt, cut-resistant trousers, goggles, military gloves, dust-proof mask, safety boots, helmet, flashlight, shot-proof wristwatch, waterproof travel bag, and whatnot. He believes he has everything he needs to explore the dungeon. Akane asks Kazuhiko if he has something he can use as a tool to compete with the monsters. Kazuhiko says the tools are the cards, so he won't be carrying any additional weight. He says he also wanted to bring a gas mask, but apparently he can't do so without knowing what gas it would be. Akane says she will take care of that. She adds that the air inside of the dungeon is generally non-poisonous. Some traps use poison gas, but the gas will naturally dissipate if he simply waits a little. Kazuhiko wears his goggle, and with that, he and Akane decide to begin the dungeon exploration. The two go inside the dungeon when Kazuhiko says it is brighter than he had expected. The air feels so clean, he doesn't even need a mask. But Akane tells him that it is because he is near the safe zone. It is also why there aren't any monsters here. As they are walking, Kazuhiko notices Akane. He thinks that she is very good-looking. Ever since their first meeting, she's been really polite, very dedicated, and makes him feel assured. He wonders what would happen if he asked her to wear heels. Just then, Akane stops him and says she can feel his gaze all over her. Kazuhiko apologizes, saying he's a bit distracted. Akane says he can think whatever he wants as it is fine by her. Kazuhiko says he expected to find monsters sooner, so he is a little disappointed. Akane says in most cases, monsters that appear on the first floor are weak enough for humans to defeat with their bare hands. That said, this is an A-ranked dungeon, so there is really no telling what might occur. Kazuhiko says he will be careful. He adds that they should start mapping out the area as well. But Akane says that won't be necessary since she is the legendary card Akane. There is no way she would get lost. She says she can feel monsters drawing close and asks Kazuhiko to be careful. With that said, they encounter their first monster, a goblin. Akane explains that goblins are one of the weaker types of monsters in the dungeons. They are only the size of a small child and can be found alone or in groups. Kazuhiko agrees, saying the goblins are very small, only 1 meter tall at most. He asks if they take advantage of that to get closer or sneak aim. Before Akane can respond, a goblin marches at him and chews on his arms. Kazuhiko throws the goblin away, but he has already been injured. He realizes that the goblin is as strong as a dog when it bites. He believes he can certainly handle this, and with that he beats the goblin with his bare hands. Once the goblin is gone, a coin of 500 is left on the floor. Surprised, Kazuhiko wonders if the goblin just dropped money. Akane congratulates Kazuhiko, saying it seems like this dungeon is the type that drops money. That is the reward for defeating monsters. She asks how it feels to unearth a dungeon monster. Kazuhiko stares at Akane a bit, then says for the first time it felt surprisingly good to unearth his first monster. Akane is glad to hear that. She further explains that in most dungeons, the first floor is designed to be easiest to lure more people in. Normally, that means bugs or slimes that can be unearthed by a single stomp of a foot. But this is an A-rank dungeon, so it is throwing goblins at them right from the very start. She compliments Kazuhiko and says he is a lot stronger than she thought. She is quite impressed that he unearthed that goblin with just one punch. Kazuhiko says it is all thanks to these little beauties that he is wearing. Akane asks if that is a pair of brass knuckles, but Kazuhiko says he calls them a tool to protect his fingers, and the dungeon agrees since they have been classed as armor and not tools. He believes that he can handle this. Akane is happy to know that he found the loophole. She expects no less from him. They decide to keep going further and keep unearthing more goblins along their way. 3 hours later, they are done with the goblin apparently. Akane asks Kazuhiko what he thinks about the first floor since they have seen most of the first floor. She asks if he would like to go back and get some rest, but Kazuhiko says if they are done here, he would like to see the second floor. He says he didn't notice the first floor was laid out in a grid pattern until now. It was easier than he had expected. The first floor of the A-rank dungeon. Abyss was 800 meters long and had a grid-like pattern of passages. At the far right, he found the stairs leading to the second floor. Akane says she wouldn't recommend going up to the second floor yet. She adds that he should try to advance to E rank first on this floor because most dungeons tend to raise their danger levels significantly once he gets to the second floor. Kazuhiko agrees with Akane and decides to train a little more on his way back. They will come back after they rest a bit in the safe zone. Once they reach the safe zone, Kazuhiko takes out the cards to find the goblin cards in them too. Akane explains that this is a monster card, another possible reward for defeating the monsters. With this, he can summon goblins inside the dungeon. Kazuhiko says that from what he has learned, it is possible to get up to 2 cards for every 100 months unearthed. So he has got exactly 10 cards right now. Suddenly, the status window appears, making Kazuhiko wonder why it appeared out of nowhere. He finds a card Gacha in the status window and wonders if he can pull Gacha with just 10 monster cards. He questions what would happen if Akane was used for Gacha. Akane looks at Kazuhiko, asking if he wouldn't sacrifice her just to pull some random skill. Kazuhiko apologizes and says he was just thinking out loud. He would never let her go unless he is unearthed or conquers the entire dungeon. Akane is very pleased with his words. Kazuhiko says that the average drop rate for cards is about 2 to 3%, so get 10 more cards, he will have to unearth 500 goblins. He wonders what should he do next. Should he just touch the screen with these cards and decide to do it? And within a matter of a few seconds, the screen begins to change. After the screen complete modification, Kazuhiko finds that there are 4 gacha categories: character, tool, equipment, and item. He wonders if he can use the tools and equipment he gets from the gacha. Akane agrees, saying that if he wants to bring them to the surface, he will have to make them materialize here in the dungeon first. Kazuhiko is a bit surprised to hear this. He clicks on one of the categories of gacha and a card appears out of it. Kazuhiko finds it a waste of time as the card says seed, which is common. He wonders if there are also UC, R, SR, UR, and LR for uncommon, rare, ultra rare, and legend rare. Akane explains that this is a poison. He can drink it like cold medicine, and it can also heal scratches and bruises in the blink of an eye. She asks Kazuhiko not to be discouraged since he only got a common card on his first try. She adds that he doesn't need any potions for scratches. All he needs to do is ask her, and she will be glad to lick the scratches for him. Kazuhiko looks at Akane and gets shy. He reminds her not to be so close to him, he is a man after all. He feels something and blushes. Akane says she has been noticing his raging desire for a while and asks him not to hold back anymore. She asks him to be free and fulfill all his desires. Kazuhiko moves Akane from his way. He then tells her that he is still an F rank, and he is competing with his bare hands. He asks her to hold on until he can get a little bit stronger, which makes Akane smile. She asks him to make sure he reserves some time for her soon, until one of them is unearthed, so no matter what happens, she will always be by his side. In the last few days, Kazuhiko has defeated 500 goblins, and they have dropped 5,53,500 yen coins. In total, that is 2,76,500 yen. Kazuhiko looks at the money and wonders if he considers this as an income, then what should he do with the taxes? He explains to Akane that in Japan, he is required to declare the source of his income to the government. He wonders if he should exchange it in the bank and put it in his account. He wonders how should he explain the money he got in the dungeon. It is too hard to use. For now, instead of relying on this money, he will continue his consulting work and focus on conquering the dungeon. With that, Kazuhiko decides to get ready for his consulting business. As he is getting ready, he notices that his shirt and belt are a bit loose, making him wonder if he lose weight. But Akane says it might be because of the strengthening factor. Upon asking, she explains that the strengthening factor is the smoke that monsters produce when defeated. If he absorbs the smoke into his body and trains his body, he will experience dramatic growth. It will increase muscle strength, reflex speed, and cell regeneration. Kazuhiko says he feels a change in the quality of his muscles while clenching his wrist. He says that if he looks too skinny, he won't look dignified as a consultant. He decides to leave for work while Akane wishes him the best of luck for the trip. Outside, Kazuhiko meets with his childhood friend Iwamoto. Iwamoto asks Kuzuhoki if he has lost some weight, to which Kazuhiko says he has been doing a bit of exercising. Iwamoto says he envies him for becoming slimmer. They had discussed something earlier, so Kuzuhito gave Iwamoto the training plans and Kara grant application forms. He says with this, a subsidy should be granted. Iwamoto says these sure are the complaints from smoking from the part-timers. He would recommend separating smoking areas in the restaurants. Kuzuhito likes the idea and decides to hold a meeting with the next manager to discuss it. After that, Iwamoto offers Kazuhiko to become one of their executives. He says he can trust him with the management. Kazuhiko says he is glad to hear the offer, but he prefers to be a lone wolf. Iwamoto says that he would rely on him again if needed, to which Kazuhiko gladly agrees. Later, he comes back from work and does some work. Kazuhiko thinks that doing a desk in the dungeon is efficient. He wonders if he should put a bed in here too. Having an item box like in a light novel would be nice too. Just then, Akane interrupts him, stating he already has that by appearing from behind. Kazuhiko asks Akane not to appear from behind him. Akane is explaining something when Kazuhiko gazes at Akane. She realizes what is happening and decides to move closer to Kazuhiko. She sits on the lap, to which Kazuhiko says if she keeps inviting him like this, he might end up losing it all. Akane replies saying it would make her happy. She adds that she has been waiting for his kindness, she has been aching. Struggling to control himself, Kazuhiko asks Akane to get off. He has finished his work, so that is all for today. After that, they discuss the light novel. Kazuhiko explains to Akane about the light novel that he can draw 11 times for every 10 gacha draws. Kazuhiko says he will try to gather enough goblin cards for 10 draws. Akane says he will get 1 card for every 50 goblins and he needs 10 cards to draw once. Then he will have to unearth 5,000 goblins. She asks if he would be fine with that. Kazuhiko says he is fine since at this pace he can unearth 100 goblins in 2 hours. To unearth 5,000 goblins will require 100 hours. He will take a 30-minute break every 4 hours and get 8 hours of sleep every 18 hours. This means that the time spent competing is 16 hours, so he will have to do it 6 times. He does some more crazy maths and concludes that he needs to spend 148 hours inside the dungeon. Taking a shower and recharging his phone along the way should be doable in 4 hours above ground. Akane confirms if Kazuhiko is going to keep unearthing goblins for 148 hours. Kazuhiko agrees, saying they need to experiment and determine how often he ranks up. The efficiency of the extermination is important after all. He has brought towels and an air mattress, so they should start testing it right away. Akane agrees, and with that, the two set off to go inside the dungeon and unearth as many goblins as possible. Kazuhiko tries out some aiming ways and realizes that while running, when he adds a kick and a punch, the goblin flows quite far, and these 2 aiming techniques are the quickest way to defeat them. He decides to try 4 sets of this. After some more beating, it takes 110 minutes for Kazuhiko to defeat the goblins. He realizes that he has gotten a bit faster at this. As expected, after unearthing 100 goblins, 2 cards drop, but still, no rank up. He wonders how many more goblins he needs to defeat so that he can rank up. Kazuhiko repeats the same process, while Akane looks at the card wondering if Kazuhiko is unearthing 100 goblins in 2 hours, then he is going to repeat this process 500 times. This is the first time she has seen someone think about efficiency and theory while aiming. To achieve his goal, he executes, verifies, and improves. She has never had a mazer like this before. Once Kazuhiko is done with unearthing the goblins for the time, he decides to have a meal with Akane. Akane is more than delighted, as she never thought she would be able to have such luxury. Kazuhiko explains that these days there is a wide selection of survival food and they taste great. While eating, he wonders why the card drop rate hasn't changed today either. He thinks he should probably do a few more rounds. Kazuhiko tells Akane that after they eat the food, he will take the 8-hour break. And once he is back above ground, he will take a bath. The two go back to the dungeon to unearth some more goblin. As Kazuhiko is being a goblin, it flies far away with just 1 punch. Shocked, He tells Akane about it. Just then, his status window pops up which shows his rank has been upgraded to E. Akane congratulates Kazuhiko for the success. He asked about the term empty on the window. Akane explains that in the first place, skills are acquired from skill orbs obtained in the dungeon or through many years of experience. She says seeing empty lists is a first for her. Kazuhiko is a bit concerned but decides to check his skills later. He adds that now that he has reached the E rank, he will have to do the calculations again. This irritates Akane and she asks if they have to do math once more. And like that, the two go back to the safe zone. Akane asks Kazuhiko if he has finished his meal, to which he agrees. She asks if he will be resting for the day, but Kazuhiko says he will have a look at his new empty skill slot. Akane sits closer to where Kazuhiko is lying down on the sofa. She takes his head and puts it on her lap. She then asks if this new skill slot he obtained from the rank up. Kazuhiko agrees and tries to focus on the status screen but cannot do it because of Akane blocking his sight. So Akane looks it on Kazuhiko's behalf. She tells Kazuhiko that stuff like swordsmanship, spearmanship, and martial arts have appeared in the empty skill slot. Kazuhiko says he thinks he can choose any skill from these. He looks around the skills when he realizes that these skills are available only after he meets certain conditions. If he touches it with his fingers, a description appears just like in a game that explains the rules. Akane asks if he would like to try out martial arts. She says that combat has been primarily focused on physical aiming so far. With martial arts, he can make use of his experience. Kazuhiko agrees, saying it is true, but is off the table. He says he will have to deal with 666 dungeons all over the world. The key isn't his strength, but the power of the group. What he needs is a skill that can form and unite a group. Akane is happy to see that Kazuhiko is considering a future as well. Kazuhiko suggests finding out what other skills are available since each must have its traits. Later, he goes back to his house and takes a long heated shower. As he is about to finish showering, Kazuhiko thinks that by showering above ground and sleeping in the dungeon, he will have to get used to managing time. And since there is no sunlight, he will have to think about nutrition. As he is planning what to do next, the doorbell rings. He goes to check on the door to find a cute girl standing in front of him. It turns out to be the girl for her part-time job. The girl comes inside the house. She asks about the more than usual garbage. She also points out that there are so many pre-made meals. She says that it is bad for his health if he doesn't eat well. Kazuhiko apologizes to the girl named Mary Kinuchi. She is his relative, and after her parents divorced 3 years ago, she moved back to her hometown in Edogawa City. Since Mary returned, she's been coming over once a week to do errands as a part-time job. Kazuhiko tells Mary that there are some circumstances behind all this. He asks her not to question about the details. Mary says she isn't going to tell Mom about this. Kazuhiko looks at his watch, realizing there is a problem now. He was planning on going back into the dungeon, but he can't exactly enter now that Mary's here. He believes he will have to put today's testing on the shelf. Mary stares at Kazuhiko and asks if he has lost weight since he looks slimmer. Taken aback by the sudden questioning, Kazuhiko says he is the same as ever. He says he has started a new job which pays better, so he will increase her pay as well. Mary is happy to hear that since they have a school trip in October, so she is grateful her pay will increase. Mary's family has been in a difficult financial situation since the divorce. The best Kazuhiko can do as a relative is increase her allowance like this. He asks Mary about her grandma, to which she replies saying grandma doesn't seem to be doing well. She probably needs to be hospitalized, but that costs money. Her mom is also having a hard time, so she was thinking about quitting high school for work. Kazuhiko doesn't like this idea of Mary. He says she should properly finish high school and go to school. He says he will manage the money somehow. He says he will have to talk to her mom, Shiori, about this. Mary thanks Kazuhiko for his help. She adds that her mom, Shiori, feels bad since she is relying on him so much. To ease them at once, Kazuhiko says he wants Mary to help him with his new job. It won't take long, and it would put her mom at ease as well. Mary asks if it is some naughty job. Annoyed, Kazuhiko calls Mary an idiot and asks what she thinks he does for a living. He asks Mary not to overthink since he will support her. Mary is more than happy and thanks Kazuhiko for his help. After Mary completes the work for the day, Kazuhiko appreciates Mary for her job and gives her 8,000 to 10,000 yen as her increased pay. With Mary leaving to go back home, Kazuhiko thinks he will tell Mary when the time is right. The next day, Kazuhiko is training himself. Yesterday, he got a U greater than C card from the tool Gacha, so today he decides to use the steel spear he got. Akane asks if Kazuhiko completed yesterday's work, to which he agrees, saying he got some ideas on how to use the money from the dungeon, and he is thinking of practicing his tool with the time he has left today. With that, he was inside the dungeon's first floor and unearths the goblins like usual, just that this time, he is using the tool he got from the Gacha. Akane asks Kazuhiko how is his spear handling. Kazuhiko says he is getting the hang of using it with both and one hand. He has hunted all the goblins and suggests going to the second floor. And like that, the two go to the second floor for the very first time. Kazuhiko says it feels like monsters can appear right away once he descends to the second floor. He asks if there is no safe zone here. Akane replies saying she thinks there should be one somewhere on the second floor, and there should also be a teleportation array back to the first floor. Kazuhiko looks around the second floor and says it looks like a light novel but a maze on the second floor as expected of an A-rank dungeon. However, it is meaningless in front of Akane. As they are walking forward, Kazuhiko encounters his first monster from the second floor, which turns out to be an E-rank monster orc. Kazuhiko is a bit surprised to see a new monster already coming their way. Akane is also shocked to see a D-rank monster appear on the second floor. She tries to protect Kazuhiko and asks him to run away while the orc marches at them. She calls the orc a filthy creature and comes forward to beat it. With just a few slashes, the orc is unearthed, leaving behind a 1,000 yen bill. Akane tells Kazuhiko that this is unexpected. She had expected E-rank monsters to appear. But for a D-rank orc to appear, she thinks they should go back to the first floor and think of a plan. Kazuhiko finds it the perfect situation to test the difference between the gacha. Akane doesn't like this idea, and she states the orcs are dangerous. They have great physical strength and can easily unearth a human. But Kazuhiko says that orcs seem to drop 1,000 yen bills. If he hunts 100 of them, that is 100,000 yen. And continuously competing with them will make him stronger as well. So he will do it. They come across yet another gigantic orc. Kazuhiko thinks he has a spear that is almost 3 meters long. First, he will stab the orc's guts and then aim for its head. However, to his surprise, the orc punches him in the face, making him fly away while Akane stands there in shock. She quickly runs to check up on Kazuhiko. She takes out a potion and gives it to him. Quickly, Kazuhiko recovers and asks Akane if she gave him some potions. Akane agrees and apologizes for using 2 of them, but Kazuhiko says she saved him so it was the right decision. He says he chose the wrong tool as he lost consciousness in an instant. After mustering up the courage, he decides to complete with the orc again. Kazuhiko comes forward thinking for an orc, a club is the way. When the orc aims, they put their weight on their knees, which means he can crush their knees. Kazuhiko assures himself that there is nothing to be afraid of. As expected, the orc bends down to aim at Kazuhiko and puts all his weight on his knees. When it is his weakened and Kazuhiko unearths the orc. After that, they go back to the first floor safe zone. Akane and Kazuhiko discuss that to defeat a D-rank orc on the first try, at this rate, they can move on to the third floor soon. Let's just forget that he got bodied just now. Akane says she doesn't want to go through today's experience again. She asks Kazuhiko not to overexert himself. Kazuhiko agrees and decides to stay on the second floor for a while, and he will advance to D-rank. Akane says Kazuhiko is finally challenging the limits of human potential. Kazuhiko asks if the F rank is for ordinary people and E rank for the athletes, and D rank is for peerless competitors and legendary warriors. He adds that ever since reaching E rank, he can defeat goblins in one shot. But orcs are tough. He will need to strengthen his body with supplements and the strengthening factor. He decides to aim for a rank up and move on to the next stage. After some more practicing, Akane asks Kazuhiko if he is still going to work above ground since they have defeated 6,000 goblins at this point, and they have saved quite a lot of money. Kazuhiko agrees, saying this world is an information society. If he has a lot of money, the government will check its sources. To use the money from the dungeon, it is better to continue working during the day. But yes, the amount of money has gotten quite big. He wonders if he should consult Iwamoto about it. With that, he goes to see his childhood friend again. Iwamoto says that regarding the exchange, there is no problem and it saves them some trouble too, and a real estate company, he thinks. He says a company they do business with is also working on a land sale, but that will cost him money. Kazuhiko says he doesn't mind that. Instead, he is willing to buy all the land in cash and a lump sum. Iwamoto says for that reason he called him out of nowhere. It is quite a positive story. He asks for surety from Kazuhiko that it is not some problematic money, which Kazuhiko denies. He asks what would Iwamoto do if he found a cave with money flowing out of it. Iwamoto says that is not something Kazuhiko would say. He says if it were him, he would first check if the money was real. Then whether it is real or not, he would inform the police. If he couldn't report it to the police, he would ignore it. And if he needed the money, he would just consider it as income. However, it is hard to spend if it is in the hundreds of millions of yen. Kazuhiko also agrees with Iwamoto's statement. Iwamoto says he has a contact in the field. He adds he will tell Kazuhiko just because he is his childhood friend. He states that by circulating it in private virtual currency markets thousands of times, They make it untraceable. Eventually, they transfer it to bank accounts as consulting fees. This whole thing is called money laundering, and some people in Japan are familiar with this method. Kazuhiko thanks his friend and says he will look into it next time. Meanwhile, he also keeps thinking that it is not something praiseworthy, but if things continue like this, the world will end in 10 years. To avoid that, he will do anything. With that said, Kazuhiko meets with some people for the contract. He gives them a bag to which the other person asks for 10% commission if it is more than 100 million yen. He says the rest will be laundered and transferred from multiple companies. Kazuhiko asks if it will be fine if the paper companies are exposed, but the guy says there is no problem in that area. He then decides to meet after a month. With that, Kazuhiko realizes that there is no turning back now. He needs to brace himself. In New York, some policemen are investigating some reports when they encounter an opening to the earth. It seems like another dungeon has come out. In the White House, the president, Ronald Howard, is talking about America being put first in everything. He says he has heard some fools are aiming at their beloved nation. Just then, a guard tells the president that they are being aimed for sure. 2 unknown caves with different time flows have appeared in their country. He adds that they are still investigating, but reports have been coming and that unknown creatures have appeared. The president asks about how the time flows differently. The guy says approximately 140 minutes or so, but they yet have to measure it precisely. President Ronald says that America must not be scared and warned by any kind of danger. They must investigate these occurrences thoroughly. On the other hand, in Tokyo, somewhere in Osaka, Umeda, a guy and a girl are busy talking in the car. Just then, yet another hole emerges from the ground as the two talk about not sleeping tonight. In Nagatacho, a picture of a monster is shown and some ask what they think about it. They think it is some kobold from manga. It looks like something from a light novel. They are shaken to know that something like this was seen in the real world. A guy explains that last week a sinkhole appeared in an underground parking lot in Mita, Osaka. 2 police officers who rushed to the scene were aimed at the creature in the photo. One of the policemen was unearthed in the line of duty, and the other was seriously injured. Moreover, the day before yesterday, riot police tried to enter, but their tools turned into cards, and they were aimed by the same creature, resulting in injuries. People wonder if it is some kind of opposition by the extremists, but the other guy says that there is no movement from any religious or leftist groups. Even if it were, what would be the meaning of such a large-scale operation? They ask if there was any movement from overseas. One of the men says that the inquiries from the USA report show similar strange caves appearing in New York and Chicago. No damage has been confirmed yet like in Japan. The main lead asks if there is anything from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but the people tell him there is nothing yet being reported regarding the issue. They decide to check with the ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Countries. Meanwhile, the 98th-generation Prime Minister, Seiichiro Urabe, is also discussing how to proceed with caution in this situation. He says that if this is some opposition, it would be a global opposition organization they are unaware of. The problem is that nothing is known. If it is some unknown natural disaster, chaos will be inevitable. He suggests hurrying up and reporting this problem to the United Nations. On the other hand, in Tokyo, Edogawa, Kazuhiko is listening to the news which says that in the current situation, they are coordinating with ASEAN countries to investigate further. Additionally, in response to this confusion, the government is taking some actions. Kazuhiko says it seems there are people being unearthed. The whole world is in a state of panic. With the appearance of the dungeons, some people are demanding to be let in, even though it is very dangerous. Akane says such fools have to learn the hard way. They won't be any help to Kazuhiko at all. Kazuhiko says what he is looking for are comrades who vow to conquer the dungeons together with him. Members of the Dungeon Conquest Specialized Company are what he is thinking about building. Akane asks if they should start gathering comrades right away. Kazuhiko suggests seeing how the world reacts first. In the Dungeon Busters, they need people with a steadfast mind, comrades who can compete not just for themselves, but for others as well. Mary's mother's name is Shiora Kinuchi. She was born and raised in Osuji, Edogawaku, in a happy family. The turning point in her life was when she was about to have a baby, Mary, while she was in high school. She married her boyfriend at the time, but they got separated soon after. She has to raise Mary on her own. In the midst of that, his second cousin, Kazuhiko, visited and asked if Mary could work part-time at his place. Kazuhiko, who was 6 years older than her, hired Mary, who was in middle school, for 30,000 yen a month. Since then, 3 years have passed. Mary comes back home from Kazuhiko's place. Shiori asks Mary if she was polite while working, to which Mary agrees. She also tells Shiori that Kazuhiko raised her pay. She adds that Kazuhiko says he will introduce her to a job where she can earn even more. Shiori asks if the job is not strange, which might involve filming and all, but Mary replies saying Kazuhiko says it isn't like that. He said that he will show her the place next time. Shiori says they will talk about this later. She asks Mary to have a bath first. On the other hand, Kazuhiko confirms the contract and decides to relax a bit. He has also confirmed the 3 million yen in cash. He will transfer the 270 million yen after the 10% to the specified account. He does some last confirmation using his laptop and decides to call it a day. day. Laying down, Kazuhiko thinks that after taxes, the amount will be half of 270 million yen. He realizes that he will need some more funding. With that, he goes out to run some errands after some time. As he is driving, something comes in front of his car. Concerned, Kazuhiko wonders if something got injured or something. However, as he comes out of the car, he realizes that a new dungeon has been formed on the road to Osaka. The second wave has finally come. People question what this hole is. They ask others to hurry up and call the police. Kazuhiko goes closer to the dungeon and checks his time on the watch. A dungeon has been confirmed on the new Yokohama road. A girl says that if this is a dungeon, the flow of time should be different. She tells Kazuhiko that if he dives in a little, he will come out right away. Kazuhiko looks at the stone dungeon wondering how different it would be from Abyss. Kazuhiko goes inside and then looks back to realize that people are waiting. For others, it must look like he went down in an instant. He looks around the dungeon's safe zone. He goes forward and opens the door, wondering what will appear in front of him. To his surprise, he sees a rabbit standing in front of him on the other side of the door. Initially, Kazuhiko cannot understand this since rabbits are cute. But when that rabbit yells like crazy, Kazuhiko says that is how it should be. He beats the rabbit and defeats it in an instant. However, he gets confused since no money is dropped this time. Instead, a gem can be seen lying on the floor. He takes the stone with him and decides to ask Akane about it. With that, he was back outside where people ask when he came back. As expected, it seems to people on the surface that he returned in an instant. Kazuhiko assures people saying there doesn't seem to be any danger as long as someone doesn't enter. But people start yelling and saying that this is probably the same dungeon as the one that appeared in the Umeda parking lot a month ago. Kazuhiko says, so long as no one gets too close, it will be fine. He then asks the people to contact the police. Angry, someone asks who is Kazuhiko to give them orders like this. But Kazuhiko says he is the one responsible for eradicating the dungeon that appears. He takes out his card and lets the world know that he is the owner of the dungeon busters. Kazuhiko goes back to the abyss and shows the stone to Akane. Akane explains that this is a magic stone that is simply crystallized magic power. Usually, magic can only be used by those with talent, but anyone can use magic by using a magic tool that uses magic stones. Dungeons rewards are what a world needs the most. Earth doesn't use magic, so it is strange for magic stones to appear. Kazuhiko says magic stones must be essential for civilizations that have developed magical technologies. However, he wonders why have they appeared here on Earth, which has developed scientific technology. Akane asks Kazuhiko what the people of this country and the world need the most. She thinks that is the answer. With that, they go to the third floor of the dungeon, Abyss. There, Kazuhiko competes with D-rank monsters Skeleton Knight. Akane is pleased to see how efficiently Kazuhiko is completing. She says the Skeleton Knights carry swords and are always in groups of 4, so he needs to be careful not to get surrounded by them. They are weaker than an orc, but worth 4,000 yen. She says their choice of tool works in Kazuhiko's favor. Until he encounters orcs again, she thinks that he won't have to worry much. Kazuhiko defeats the Skeleton Knights and earns the rewards. He says it is going better than he expected. He decides to add weights while hunting from tomorrow. He will put some strain on himself and rank up. The simultaneous worldwide dungeon manifestation phenomenon is the name given by scholars to the phenomenon in which dungeons all over the world at once. The UN held numerous general meetings and governments of various countries were busy responding. Some are that their country has 25 dungeons within its borders. They need financial proportion to the number of dungeons. But the other person says that this is because their country has a large territory and population. He asks if the country can manage things with its funds. The ambassador of the United States of America asks everyone to stop talking. She says their country is concerned about the bias of where the dungeons appear. Compared to America, the People's Republic of China has many dungeons. Shouldn't they consider that it is proportional to the population and not the land? Another ambassador says that their country is smaller than Japan, but dungeons appeared in 2 places, Manila and the capital. He thinks that the American ambassador is correct. Their country does not want to bear any more security risks. To combat the dungeons, they demand the withdrawal of troops deployed at national borders and seas from all UN member countries. The China's ambassador asks the other ambassadors not to be absurd, since the South China Sea is their territorial waters. If they want them to pull back, they should recognize their sovereignty. Another ambassador also argues that if they withdraw their troops from the borders, they might be invaded from the north. For security, they must leave at least a minimum amount of troops. One of the ambassadors gets angry and asks everyone not to be absurd. Dungeons are appearing in their country as well. Now is the time for cooperation and lifting the sanctions against their country. Someone silences everyone and says they must take immediate action against the current situation. Meanwhile, in the US White House, someone informs the president that the demands regarding the disclosure of information about dungeons are growing stronger every day. There have been demonstrations in Chicago, the Dow Jones average has plummeted, and at this rate, Congress will have no choice but to act. But President Ronald is confused about the tools turning into cards as soon as they enter the dungeon. He asks who would believe such a thing. He would prefer blowing up the entire dungeon. He says that the Speaker of the House of Representatives is understanding, but the Democratic Party members are not uniting. Even if their country discloses information, he wonders if the public would believe it. It would become a diplomatic issue. The guy suggests announcing it jointly with other world leaders at the group table conference. Dungeon countermeasures will likely be on the agenda at the upcoming group table meeting in Nagoya. They should disclose the information about the dungeons in a joint statement by the developed countries. The president likes the idea and asks the guy to contact Seiichiro right now. Meanwhile, Kazuhiko is busy competing with the skeleton knights all on his own. He takes 300 skeleton knights altogether while Akane asks him to be careful and not get surrounded. He unearths 45 skeleton knights in 45 minutes. He hopes that this will earn him a lot. He says that at this rate with the current cycle, it is 1.6 million yen. That is 36 million yen in 1 day of Earth time. Akane says he will have to defeat 200,000 skeleton knights in 6 days. She asks how much he plans to complete. Just then, a notification voice comes out of nowhere and congratulates Kazuhiko for the racial limit break confirmation. As the first to achieve this feat, the legendary card, Cheeky Emily, will be presented. It then asks Kazuhiko to aim for an existence limit break. Shocked, he asks what is existence limit break and wonder if this is Akane's voice. Soon, a new cute girl pops out of a card. The girl, Emily, asks what are they doing peeking into someone's privacy. This Emily is one of the great 108 pillars, a genius magician. Emily asks Kazuhiko and Akane to be grateful as normally. She would make them address her with Sama, but she will make a special exception and allow them to call her Emily. Kazuhiko thinks that sometimes there are people like this. People who are only good at asserting themselves, but don't communicate well, who only make the atmosphere in the company worse. Akane introduces herself to Emily, stating she's a female ninja. She says she is looking forward to working with her, but Emily doesn't like this. She says it is quite bold to be summoning another of the 108 pillars beside her. Emily stares at Akane, to which Akane asks what is wrong. Emily confirms Akane's name. She points at Akane and disrespects her with her words. She points out Akane's outfit and the belt she is wearing. She asks if Akane has been trying to get close to Kazuhiko. She says she has got nervous to be stealing Kazuhiko before Emily. She lets Akane know that from now on, she will be in charge. She laughs, saying the master seems dull anyway, so they all should just obey her. Annoyed, Kazuhiko grabs Emily and asks Akane to keep an eye out for monsters. He says he is going to discipline Emily. Smiling, Emily asks Kazuhiko to punish Emily thoroughly to her heart's content. Worried, Emily now asks Akane to help her. Kazuhiko throws Emily on the ground and then says she is nothing but all talk and no substance, just a loud mouth with a strong ego. You don't need allies like that when the world is at stake. He gives her 3 options. Either she unearths herself here, changes her attitude, or chooses another master. But Emily asks Kazuhiko not to get so hyped up. Kazuhiko says Akane calls him Kazuhiko. He tells Emily that she can call him by his name like Akane or call him master. He won't allow any other names. Annoyed, Emily asks Kazuhiko who he thinks he is. Kazuhiko gets angry at her. He says he will have to teach her some manners. With that, he beats Emily, making her cry. He then asks if she has calmed down. He says he doesn't mind her being cheeky, but he won't tolerate her disrespecting him and Akane. Emily calms down a little. Kazuhiko then explains to Emily that in 10 years, the world will be destroyed. To prevent that, he will need her power. She really can't stand having him as her master. She can return to her card. She is free to choose another master. He will even help her find one. With tears in her eyes, Emily says she will compete next to Kazuhiko. After all, she is a top-tier legendary rare card. Kazuhiko says he will be looking forward to working with her. With that, Kazuhiko wrote some stuff on the board. Akane asked about it, to which Kazuhiko says he was going to explain the dungeons they have gone through so far. He says 98 days have passed since the dungeon system was activated. The second wave of the cluster phenomenon has passed, and more than 130 dungeons should have appeared. Shocked, Emily asks what he means by should, has not confirmed it. Kazuhiko says that the number of dungeons reported by the UN is 36. Including unconfirmed ones, there are like over 130. Akane asks what is he going to do now since he said he needs allies. Emily says she would prefer to work with other character cards over humans. Kazuhiko says for now he plans to make their next ally a human. There are 3 reasons. First, he thinks the dungeon will soon be open to the public. Second, he wants to observe what happens when people other than himself enter the dungeon. Finally, to get the world to recognize the Dungeon Busters organization, he needs to increase the number of allies. Emily says she doesn't get it, but she doesn't mind if that is what Master wants. She asks when will he start the organization itself. Kazuhiko says he will start it after he is done moving, confusing Emily. In the Nagoya G7 conference hall, President Ronald says that America has confirmed that the black stones produced by the dungeons can split water to produce hydrogen. These stones will create demand for hydrogen power generation systems and trigger a new energy revolution. Furthermore, they propose the simultaneous global release of this information and the establishment of a dungeon management organization under the United Nations. Now is the time for all countries around the world to work together. The ambassador of Japan fully supports the words of the president, but a woman asks what is exactly meant by a dungeon management organization. The president says that individual countries can't handle the dungeon alone. They must cooperate on a global scale. In their country, monsters are strong and special forces are struggling. It means establishing a new profession specialized in exploring the dungeons and having an international organization manage it. They wondered if dungeon explorers would be the new profession. Private sector involvement will be essential for this new profession. Not only black stones, but unknown medicines and technologies may also be uncovered. They wonder if there is an English term that captures the essence of such an unknown explorer, perhaps Indiana Jones. But one of them says it is an adventurer. And like that, a new profession called dungeon adventurer is established. And soon the news can also be heard everywhere in the world. It has been decided to establish the dungeon adventurer organizations within the United Nations. While exploring the dungeons, adventurers will collect special materials called black stones and cards. Adventurers may be recruited from the general public. Further discussions are scheduled to take place regarding the implementation of a selection process to identify individuals with abilities. Kazuhiko already knew that the dungeons would be open to the private sector, but it was happening sooner than he expected. Still, it will take time for the United Nations to take action, so it will probably be a while before it is operational. He decides to start gathering up a team now. Later that day, Shiori and Mary come in with some boxes. Shiori praises Kazuhiko, stating it is a lovely place. She says it is very unlikely for him to move houses so suddenly like this. Mary notices a stab-proof vest and a stab-proof shirt and asks Kazuhiko what he has been up to. Kazuhiko says he wanted to talk about it with you today. With that, he takes them to the dungeon Abyss. He says this place is one of the dungeons currently causing a stir around the world. He brought them here using an ability called teleportation that allows traveling from the surface to the dungeon in an instant. Shocked, Shiori asks what exactly does this all mean. Kazuhiko explains that about 4 months ago, a dungeon appeared in his garden. When he went down to investigate, there was a door that opened up to what was a large space. That is where it all began. After that, he sealed the dungeon entrance so that no one could enter, and worked on unearthing the monsters that he found further in. That is why he wanted to ask Mary to help him with his work inside the dungeon. Dungeons have appeared all over the world, and sightings have been confirmed in Yokohama and Osaka. In 8 months, the dungeons will be fully activated, and they have no way of knowing how much damage humanity may suffer. Shiori asks Kazuhiko why he wants Mary to help him. Kazuhiko says this is so that Mary can protect herself. If the dungeons aren't conquered, monsters will overflow into the surface in 10 years. To prevent this, they need as many people as possible to work on conquering these dungeons. Shiori cannot believe Kazuhiko. She says that if what he is saying is true, there is no way she is going to let her daughter do something so dangerous. Kazuhiko says he is willing to pay 2,000 yen an hour, including hazard pay, and of course it will be in the dungeon time. Shiori asks about the dungeon time, to which Kazuhiko explains that the time in the dungeon is 144 times faster than it does on the surface. Working for 1 hour on the surface means working 144 hours in the dungeon. So it means that for working 144 hours in the dungeon, Mary will be paid 2,88,000 yen an hour. Shaking, Shiori says she is disappointed in Kazuhiko as he is luring people with money. She says they will be excusing themselves now, but Kazuhiko shows them an item called High Potion. It is effective at treating illnesses. He is giving it to them, hoping Shiori could believe him about what is going to happen. He says if she does believe him, he could use their help. They need Mary's help. He then further introduces Emily and Akane, stating these are characters that play an active role within the dungeons. They are the members of the Dungeon Busters. Akane introduces herself as the female ninja, while Emily says she is the Archmage Emily, but they can call her Emily. Kazuhiko says in the dungeon, Emily and Akane provide support in the competitions and help retrieve the items dropped by monsters. Shiori bends down and apologizes to Kazuhiko, stating as a mother, she can allow Mary into the dungeon. She thanks Kazuhiko for sharing the information and says she would like to think about it a little. Kazuhiko can understand their situation very well and thanks them for their help. He gives them an advance payment, stating he would be happy if they would accept it. After that, Akane asks Kazuhiko how did his discussion go. Kazuhiko replies saying Shiori got upset at him. He says he is also not that comfortable involving a relative in the dungeon either, but they have just 10 years to overcome all the dungeons. He wants there to be someone to take over if something were to happen to him. Akane assures Kazuhiko, stating she is sure they will come to understand it. She asks Kazuhiko to wait for their reply. On the other hand, Shiori asks Mary if she is alright. Mary says Kazuhiko has never helped her to help him like this before. He has supported them for all these years, and it is thanks to him that she doesn't feel lonely even when it has just been the two of them. So if there is some way she could help him, she would like to do it. Shiori finally agrees and asks Mary not to push herself too hard, and she still has to go to school properly. Mary thanks her mom for allowing her to help Kazuhiko. The next day, Kazuhiko is thinking about something when Mary comes in. She says she is here to ask about the new part-time job. With that, Mary is taken into the dungeon where she is trained by Akane and Emily. But within 30 minutes in the dungeon, Mary is building up a sweat because of the heavy vest she is wearing. Kazuhiko suggests practicing a little more. In dungeons, the only way to progress is on foot after all. Akane tells Mary that she doesn't need to be like a master who wears a 20-kilogram vest, 3-kilogram wrist weights on each arm, 8-kilogram weights on each leg, and 10-kilogram diving weights on his waist. Emily says it is very painful at first, but once Mary gets used to it, she will be able to keep up with the master. But Mary cannot take this anymore. She can't even walk anymore. Kazuhiko praises Mary for doing well and asks her to rest for now. Just then, Mary looks at a rabbit card. She looks at the card and finds the rabbit cute. Kazuhiko says that it is called a monster card. They can be used to summon monsters inside the dungeon. Mary is surprised to see something so cute like this in the dungeon. She asks if she can try to summon it. Kazuhiko doesn't allow it though. He says she is not ready to try summoning monster cards all on her own. Emily also agrees with Mary and tells Kazuhiko that cute things are cute, so let's just summon it. With that, Mary decides to summon the rabbit via the card. Within no time, a cute little rabbit pops out of nowhere. Mary finds the rabbit very cute and decides to call her Mew. She cannot believe something so cute can be called a monster. Annoyed, Kazuhiko tells Mary she can't just summon it without permission. Even if it is cute, it is still a monster. He asks her not to approach or come in contact with it so casually. Akane assures Kazuhiko that it is okay to pet the rabbit. She says monsters kept as pets can grow in strength, so they should experiment with how quickly and to what extent its growth can be. Emily also agrees, stating it will keep Mary happy, so why don't they keep Mew and see how it goes? If they bring her with them, she can also help to keep things competitive for Mary. Kazuhiko decides to let Mew stay as a pet. With that, they go inside the dungeon where Emily can be seen competing with the monsters. After competing with the monsters, she says she desires more challenging monsters to compete with. She calls herself amazing. She wonders if she will be able to use magic too. Kazuhiko also likes Emily's combat skills. He says magic is quite useful in times like these. Emily agrees, saying the great Archmage Emily has the most powerful magic of all the 108 pillars. She says she can teach Mary how to use magic as well. Kazuhiko suggests going a little deeper since they have Emily's magic. Mary gets a little worried upon seeing some monsters and asks about them. Akane explains that those are F-rank monsters called goblins. They are quite small, but if she unearths one of them, it will drop a 500 yen coin. She says she will defeat this first one and show her how it is done. With just a few beats, the goblins are unearthed, leaving behind the coins. Mary is shocked to see Akane's skills. Akane lets Mary know that Emily defeated the monster earlier, but when she encounters the monsters in the dungeon, she will have to learn how to deal with them on her own. Mary asks if she should use the shovel or a sword when dealing with a monster, to which Akane replies, saying anything is fine. But she must not leave herself open. She adds that goblins can bite as hard as a dog. Emily explains to Mary that going into the dungeon is always risking their life, so she will need to get used to that. With that, Mary defeats her first goblin. Akane is happy to see Mary's success. She asks how is she feeling after defeating her first goblin. Mary looks at the sword, saying she took the goblin down with one beat, so she thinks she's feeling good. Akane says it must be from all the weight training. She suggests keeping it up. Just then, another goblin comes out of nowhere and marches at Mary, but this time, Mew comes in front of the goblin and defeats it. Mary pets his little Mew, stating it isn't some normal rabbit. She is her cute little partner. She adds that with Mew, they are as strong as 100 people, and thanks Mew for her help. Later, they all have a meal together, and Mew also gets a little treat, a beef stew. Mary cannot understand how a rabbit is eating a beef stew. Akane explains that monsters are omnivores. They will eat meat, vegetables, or whatever they are able to get their hands on. Just then, Kazuhiko comes in and asks if Mew managed to defeat the goblin with just one aim. He praises her, saying she is strong enough to handle it. Mary thanks Kazuhiko and says she will take good care of Mew. Kazuhiko gives the card case for Mew to Mary and asks her to take good care of it. With that, they turn on the TV for some news. Turns out a third wave of dungeons has been confirmed. Just 36 days after the second wave, new dungeons are appearing all over the world. They shift to the ground analyst, Maruyama, to see what's going on. Maruyama explains that she is in Sapporo, Hokkaido. It appears that this year's snow festival may get cancelled, as it comes with the appearance of a new dungeon in Japan. It's hard to ignore the ominous atmosphere here at the scene, even as it has been sectioned off by blue traps. Following the Osaka and Yokohama dungeons, the site is under strict management by the Japan Ground Self-Defense Forces. She can't help but feel anxious about how long this phenomenon will continue. Kazuhiko says it has been 36 days since the Yokohama dungeon appeared. The third wave is right on cue. Mary asks Kazuhiko if everything's going to be okay. Kazuhiko assures Mary, stating they have got this. Maruyama adds that following the Yokohama and Osaka, a third dungeon has appeared in Sapporo, Hokkaido. The entrance has been sealed off, and the police are continuing to direct the local traffic. Currently, the city is under strict management by Japan Ground Self-Defense, and so far, no civilians have been injured. Kazuhiko says they expect 7 more dungeon waves to occur, since 36 days is a tenth of a year in dungeon time. Dungeons are practically different worlds where even time flows differently. The government can't be held responsible for what happens inside. Unearth or be unearthed, everyone is on their own. Even with a multinational organization opening dungeons up to civilians, it will probably take around a year for them to implement proper measures. A boy named Shingo Yamoka is a first-year student at Matsu High. There is an idol here in Class B. Though he calls her an idol, she is not famous and hasn't appeared on TV, but she is the most beautiful girl in the class. Shingo goes inside the class and sees someone greet the beautiful girl Mary. Mary asks Shingo if he saw the news yesterday. She is 16 years old at the time. There is not a single boy in school who isn't interested in her. She used to be kind of gloomy and hard to approach, but recently she's become much brighter. Shingo looks at Mary thinking she is seriously very cute. Another guy asks Shingo to stop blocking the doorway and get away. People are also noticing the change in Mary's behavior and ask if she has got someone special. They say that she's bound to get offers from agencies with a beauty like her. But Mary says she is not interested. The girl asks Mary if she doesn't get fat since she eats a lot. But Mary says maybe it is because she gets more hungry. Someone says it might be because she is seeing someone special. Shocked, Mary asks what are the girls talking about. The girl says it is the guy Kazuhiko she has been hanging around a lot, but Mary explains that it is nothing like that. Shingo gets angry after knowing that there might be some guy in Mary's life. He wonders what kind of man changes Mary and decides to investigate. After school, Mary is walking back home while thinking it would be a problem if people find out about Kazuhiko in the dungeon. She needs to make sure everything remains a secret. Just then, a guy comes out of a car and approaches Mary. He introduces himself as Wakadi from Allure Productions. He asks if she is interested in becoming an idol. Mary thinks that Wakadi showed up right in front of her house. She doesn't have time for all this. So she bluntly denies, saying she isn't interested in becoming an idol at all. She asks Wakadi to leave, but he seems adamant. He asks her not to be like this and says they should talk about it while trying to come close to her in the wrong way. Angry, Mary grabs Wakadi's wrists, stating he would be scared too if some stranger would try to come close to him like that. She asks if she should call the police. She asks him not to show his face again. With that, she goes inside the house where Shore is cleaning the dishes. She asks if the school is finished for today. Mary agrees, saying some strange guy approached her outside. Somehow, Kazuhiko hears everything. He takes her with her to the production company. He says they might ask her to advertise as some indecent idol. Mary laughs, saying that Shore was unfortunate. She says she feels awkward when he uses the term indecent. Recently, she has gained a bit of weight. Kazuhiko says that is probably the influence of the enhancement factors. It strengthened her bones and muscles. She is just a high school girl, but she has the strength of professional competitors. He asks her to be careful when she competes with people. With that said, Mary goes inside the dungeon where Akane puts some weird clothing on Mary, which Mary finds embarrassing. She asks Kazuhiko, what is this all about? He explains that this is the rare rank equipment that provides a buff to physical resistance and boosts magic power. It is just a little hard to know where to look. There is also a mage cloak, so he decided to use that instead. Emily says since Mary is a holy mage, she thinks a pure white cloak would suit her. Kazuhiko says he is not about to waste gacha pulling on something so pointless. They will make use of the equipment they have. After Mary, Kazuhiko also gives some cute beast gloves to Mu. He explains that these gloves protect the monster's hands when striking. Just then, Mu gives a live demonstration of what the gloves do since she likes them a lot. With that, they go inside the dungeon where Emily trains Mary how to magic. She says magic is all about visualization. To use a fire arrow, imagine a flaming arrow and channel her magical energy into that image to shape it. Mary's magic is called Purifying the Living, which is effective against the living monsters. Soon, Mary gets the hang of the magic and uses her magic on the skeleton knights. Kazuhiko decides to use the third floor to practice holy magic. He lets Mu know that he will be counting on her as well. As expected, Mu marches at the skeleton knights with all her powers and defeats each one of them with grace and cuteness. Mary praises Mu after her wonderful performance. She tells Mu that she is amazing, and after that, a brush is used to clean the cute little paws of Mu. Kazuhiko says that is how they will take care of their equipment, as well as countermeasures for the third floor. He expects that the dungeon will be open to the public soon. He adds that it is good for Mu since he got his equipment. Kazuhiko looks at the brush that was used to clean Mu's paws and says he cannot see how that brush is a rare rank item. Emily explains that it makes Nade Beast's fur all fluffy, but also boosts their physical resistance. Kazuhiko is surprised at how fluffy and shock-absorbent pet roaming around. Anyhow, they continue with the preparations and work hard to prepare themselves for what is coming for them next. Kazuhiko gives Mary the pay for the job. He says it was her first mission, but since she ranked up, he calculated it at an hourly rate of 2,000 yen. Mary thanks Kazuhiko for the pay and says she might buy some souvenirs on her way back home. He says it took him 10,000 goblins to go to E rank. It will probably take her a little while longer to reach E rank 2. Mary says that tomorrow is Sunday and asks what are they going to do about the dungeon. Kazuhiko says he is thinking about resting in the morning and heading into the dungeon in the afternoon. She is welcome to join him if she likes. Mary asks if Kazuhiko is going somewhere since he is thinking about resting in the morning. Kazuhiko says there is going to be a special program about the dungeon appearance in Sapporo. He wants to watch it to help plan for future strategies. He asks Mary to get some rest, to which she agrees. Later that night, Mary is watching TV while eating her dinner. In the news, it says that regarding the dungeon appearance cycle, 36 days is 1/10 of a year, and since this is the third occurrence, that would mean they can expect dungeon appearances. However, it is premature to assume there won't be any more than that. This phenomenon is an unprecedented supernatural event for humanity after all. Physicists are scratching their heads over this. Just how long will this phenomenon continue across the world? Kazuhiko can be seen listening to the news at the same time. The people have hopes for a G7 joint statement on civilian access to dungeons. In any case, a massive workforce will be needed moving forward. Kazuhiko thinks that Japan's government has been slow in responding to the dungeon situation. The real question is how Ling society can remain safe like this. At the Ministry of Defense, a test has been devised for the civilians to access the dungeons. They wonder if they should proceed with the first trial in Yokohama. In the Yokohama dungeon, E-rank self-defense force members have already entered the second layer, and they have confirmed a skill called card gacha. The main concern is the competition over magic stones and equipment within the dungeon. There are already reports that tens of thousands of soldiers from the People's Liberation Army have begun entering dungeons in the Greater East Asia People's Communist State. Experts have also raised opinions on the management of adventurer organizations, including proposals to establish trading posts for cards and equipment, along with the suggestions that the Ministry of Defense should elevate the Dungeon Countermeasures Division to a higher administrative level. Just then, the director Ishihara comes in asking who is leading the Dungeon Countermeasures Division. She says it is progressing smoothly. She is the Ministry of Defense's rising star among the reformists. At the Dungeon Adventurer Management Bureau, Yokohama branch, someone asks to take a look. It has been 5 months since the first dungeon appeared. So far, Dumigans have emerged in Sapporo, Yokohama, Osaka, and just recently in Sendai. Following the G7 joint statement, nations have been actively debating the Dungeon Adventurer system. The Japanese government has finally approved the Dungeon Adventurer system. Trials are now being conducted with volunteers from both the self-defense forces and the civilian sector. 20 years or older, having no criminal records, and possessing Japanese citizenship. If they meet these criteria, they look forward to their participation. With that said, a guy named Akira Shishido comes in stating he's a marshal. He dedicated himself to karate from a young age and earned a black belt at Shinmeiken at an unprecedented speed. At 18, he won both the national and international tournaments. Since then, he has claimed 6 consecutive championships. And then, what caught his eye was a recruitment notice for dungeon adventurers. They are saying civilians can take on the dungeon now. He says in a dungeon, he can compete to his heart's content. He thought he could reach even greater heights than he is now. So he signed up without hesitation. He will become the strongest adventurer of all time. At the primary examination site, Akira realizes that there are quite a few older folks too when he notices Kazuhiko. An examiner says they will not begin the Dungeon Adventurer exam. He asks everyone to enter with the required documents. First comes the written test. Akira is smiling as the test is about basic dungeon knowledge and the fundamentals of adventuring. He thinks this will be easy. He completes the test quickly and decides to submit it. Next comes to the fitness test. Akira is weight strong and gets to have a right grip strength of 120 kilograms. Just then, Akira notices Kazuhiko and realizes he has passed the test. Kazuhiko takes off his shirt for the test when the people get shocked. It turns out Kazuhiko has got quite the build. Akira finds this interesting as he wasn't expecting that. Next comes the strength and lung capacity evaluation. The candidates are asked to do vertical jumps and shuttle runs. Akira looks at Kazuhiko, wondering if the old man has been holding back all this time. He realizes that Kazuhiko is doing it even when the examiners aren't watching. He wonders if Kazuhiko has a more impressive background than him. After the test, the results re-announced for the top 100 from the written test and the top 100 from the physical exam. They are asked to move on to the second stage. Akira is happy to see that he aimed for a higher rank after seeing Kazuhiko, but turns out Kazuhiko didn't surpass his ranking. He wonders what is the name of this old man. Just then, someone calls Kazuhiko, so Akira gets to know his name and checks the ranking again. It turns out that even though Kazuhiko was holding back, he still managed to make it into the first 30. He thinks that Kazuhiko's true ability must be much higher. He must have a reason for holding back. Akira hopes that Kazuhiko will show his full strength in the next stage.